Let's bring John into the conversation. John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, covering the Eagles. And, of course, McMullen's observations, quick hits on the website after every Eagles game. And a lot of stuff to get to today, John. And I guess we start with the tackle position. Doug was steadfast today. He's going back with Vaitai.
Yeah, you guys got to give me a minute because I'm stepping off the ledge after I heard you guys talk about how things are going to go moving forward. But, yeah, that's the one issue I have with Doug Pederson is Vaitai. It's Big V. I mean, he obviously wasn't ready to play. I don't have an issue with him starting in Washington because I thought from, sort of an analytical standpoint in the classroom, it made some sense because Barber was playing well. You don't want to upset two positions, all the stuff we heard. But once you see it play out in real time, and it was evident he was not ready to play, I think you got to take a step back and say, we got to get our 5 best guys on the field. Now, something that could complicate that is Jason Kelsey is injured as well. Doug expects him back next Sunday against the Vikings, but all of a sudden Wisniewski's got to play center at practice. So there's a lot of moving parts. But, yeah, I mean, Vaitai wasn't good, and that's an understatement, and that affected the entire Eagles offense. And I don't know if that surprised a lot of people because Ryan Kerrigan's a very, very underrated player, and he took advantage of a great situation for him.
Yeah, no, to me, my question all along has been, and I don't know how Doug has not been asked this question, is how is Vaitai gone from not active to starting? What would have happened in a game if Johnson got hurt? He's trying to say that Vaitai gives you the best shot to win, yet he wasn't active, which means if Johnson got hurt, he doesn't give you the best shot to win. That's where I'm puzzled.
Well, yeah, he's been asked that in the past, and the explanation, there's some, Matt Tobin is the backup swing tackle. He's a veteran guy, and there's a difference, sort of like a reliever in baseball. There's a difference from going in mid-game as opposed to getting ready all week. So there are some understanding, there are some reasons to understand the way he went. And the fact that Tobin is a veteran is more capable of handling a curveball thrown at him and sort of with the real bullets flying, whereas the rookie has a higher ceiling. And if you get him prepared during the week, maybe he can get up to speed and play. But it didn't play out like that. Vaitai did not play well. And that, as I said, that's an understatement. And to go in against Minnesota, who, if anything, is going to bring a better group than what Washington did, well, all of a sudden it's a big issue. Now, the one difference is it is a home game. That helps because you don't have to worry about the silent count, all that kind of stuff. You're not going to be a half tick late off the ball. So all of that will help them. But, I mean, you've seen the Vikings play all year. They beat up really, really good players, and I think they're going to beat up Vaitai.
Yeah, Vaitai. Let me ask you this, John. Do you think the Eagles, Pederson, I guess he calls the plays, did they give him enough help? Did they do a good enough job in trying? Because Pederson suggested that he got his legs as the game went on, that he got better as the game went on. I don't know that the tape dictates that, but did they do enough to try to help him? Because early on, he got whipped.
Yeah, they did help him a lot as the game went on, and that's why he played a little bit better because basically on every pass play there was either a slide protection, a chip, an extra tight end on Vaitai's side, and that limits you because you have to do certain things to protect a right tackle, and that's why the suspension of Lane Johnson is what it is. I mean, you go from having perhaps the best right tackle in football to having a guy who shouldn't be an NFL starter. It's an issue. And it depends how you Band-Aid it. And right now through week one, hey, their decision was incorrect. They're going to double down on that decision. I'm not sure if that's the right way to go. I didn't agree with it to begin with. But if they think this kid has a ceiling, and maybe after he gets sort of past that first rocky bump and some of the butterflies calm down, we'll see a different player. Maybe they're right. Right now, it certainly doesn't look good, though.
Right. I don't think it's fair to write him off. That's not fair. He's played one game on the road, not a lot of time since his last time he played in an actual live NFL game, which was in the preseason. So 5 or 6 weeks ago. So really not fair to write the kid off. But realistically, I do question, like you, I did all last week. I still, for the life of me, don't understand how this guy just jumped over everybody on the depth chart after being inactive. I can understand if he was number 2 on the depth chart and he was activated for the first couple of weeks and, they thought that he was ready. But the fact that he was not activated, that makes me scratch my head a lot. And they keep talking about, well, we don't want to disrupt the offensive line. If Lane Johnson got hurt in one of those games, what was their plan? Were they going to play Tobin? Were they going to play Barbary out there and you know what I mean? So they're kind of going against what they're trying to say.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. They were going. If Johnson got hurt in the first 4 games, they would have inserted Tobin at right tackle. Same thing if Jason Peters got hurt. They would have inserted Tobin at left tackle. And that's they're not the only team that goes in that direction. Every team in the NFL kind of has, because you have to limit yourself to 46 players on game day, you basically have an interior backup and a swing tackle that you can go to if you have offensive line injuries. Tobin is their swing tackle, and they feel more comfortable with him as a veteran player, as I said, to go in case of emergency. I don't necessarily disagree with that aspect of it. The part I disagree with is the fact that Barber is going to play much better at right tackle than Vaitai, and Wisniewski is going to play better at left guard than Vaitai would be playing at right tackle. So to me, it's pretty simple. While you do upset the apple cart, you get your 5 best available options on the field if you go in that direction. To me, that makes sense. Obviously, Doug Pederson and Jeff Stoutland and the Eagles think differently.
John, penalties a huge factor again in the outcome of the game. Who gets the blame there, in your opinion?
I really think it's the luck of the draw. And Mike and I have talked about it. There's some bad officiating in this league. And sometimes you're going to get whacked on a particular Sunday, and it's happened to the Eagles 2 consecutive weeks. But to all of a sudden assume they're going to get 13 penalties moving forward every week, it's not going to happen. They're going to get a different crew probably this Sunday playing at home. They're not going to be penalized as much. Part of it, though, is, a lot of those penalties were legitimate, and they have been shooting themselves in the foot a lot over the past 2 games. I have to go back to 1952 for 2 consecutive games when they were penalized that much. So I don't want to just completely dismiss it. But at the same time, that's where we are in the NFL. There's a lot of
Can I interject? I want to interject with this real fast. Some of these bad calls are based on safety, right? I mean, the Fletcher Cox call 5 years ago is not a penalty. That is a safety-based call now. Mike, I don't really know what Cox is supposed to do. And again, I'm not criticizing him for getting the penalty or criticizing the officials for throwing the flag because, again, they are safety-based bad calls. You might not like them, but that's all based on That's all based on safety. So I can live with them, even though I think it's ridiculous. That call on Fletcher Cox is absolutely ridiculous. If you're actually trying to play a football game, what is he supposed to do? How does he change his momentum?
I mean, it's really, really difficult to play defensive line and defensive back with pass interference. Hell, it's difficult to play defense in this league in today's environment. I mean, it's just anytime you get your helmet to the head of the quarterback, you're going to draw the flag. That's what happened there. I agree with you. You go back 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, it's not a penalty. It is a penalty today. And, a lot of times you'll see a quarterback ducking and dipping when they're about to get hit. and they get hit in the helmet through no fault of the defender, it's still a flag. It's just something you got to live with, and it happens to every NFL team, not just the Eagles.
37 penalties total for 324 yards combined over the last 3 games, John. And Mike and I guess because we're a couple weeks removed from it, we didn't realize 10 penalties for 99 yards against the Steelers. It's just that game was so much different than the Lions and the Redskins games.
Yeah, but for the most part, through the first 3 weeks, even though there was that uptick, as you mentioned, against the Steelers, if you think about it, the Eagles were getting lauded for how clean they were playing as far as not making mistakes under a first-year head coach through those first 3 games. And now you fast forward, and we got 2 losses in a row that are both obviously penalty-heavy. And in Detroit, it was a 14-2 disparity. So I think that tells you all you need to know about that crew. Yesterday, to be honest, I thought in today's environment, as Mike described it so well, most of the calls yesterday were legitimate, to be perfectly honest. So you do have to clean it up. The one perhaps I take issue with was Wendell Smallwood,
right,
getting the ticky-tack call. But even that, you could argue, was a penalty in today's environment. So they definitely have to clean some stuff up, and I think they will. I think they know that, and I think they'll be preaching it this week.
One thing real fast, John. I mean, I'm watching the game with my girlfriend yesterday. It's bad for the NFL. We go back to why aren't people watching?
Why are the ratings down?
Why are the ratings down? When I'm sitting there with my girl and Fletcher Cox gets called for that penalty, and her reaction is, that's too rough? Really? And then another play where Jenkins takes the ball to the house on the interception return, she actually says to me, how come the one guy got called for being too rough, but Marcus Smith didn't get called for being too rough when he made the block to spring Jenkins for the touch? I mean, when you have a girl who doesn't know anything about the game talking about how bad the officiating is, that's bad for the game, man. That's my first reaction was like, exactly. That's too rough, ? That's exactly the right question. It's a joke.
Well, yeah, I mean, I use the term over legislation. That's a perfect example because it's very difficult to explain this game to a casual fan because, obviously a quarterback has greater protections than a guy in the open field that you can light up in a block. Yeah, it does. And if you take a step back from it and you're not indoctrinated in the game of football in the NFL, it doesn't make any sense. And that's I've always said, that's one of the biggest issues this sport has when it tries to grow itself outside of this country, because a lot of the rules don't make any sense to people who are trying to learn the game from square one, and that's a perfect example. We all understand it, but the casual fan, it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And I totally understand where they're coming from.
John, you wrote at the website about gap control and no gap control and how that can impact the defense. Could you kind of discuss that a little bit further?
Yeah, I mean, the linebackers were terrible yesterday. And while I say this, and I was talking to Josh off air before I came on, you also have to at times tip your cap to the other team because Trent Williams dominated that football game. He just destroyed the right side of the Eagles' defensive line again and again and again. If you watch the film, if you watch the All-22 later this week, you will see him caving in the right side of the line. He just dominated. And that has nothing to do with, as I said, penalties, clean play. They just get dominated by a better player. But if you look at it as a whole, yeah, I mean, that was the worst game of the year by far for the Eagles linebackers. None of them played well. Even when the defensive line did their job, they weren't in position to make tackles. And that's where you have a team who came in averaging 80-something yards per rush, all of a sudden ticks off 240 because guys weren't doing their jobs.
Now, I tweeted out about Jalen Mills very early in the game, and it looked like you had that observation as well, that he couldn't keep up with Deshaun Jackson. But did you think he got better as the game went on? Yeah,
I did. I can't believe people are killing Jalen Mills today, and people are killing him. I'm like, first of all, how many cornerbacks in this league can keep up with Deshaun Jackson speed-wise? It's absurd. And the fact he gave up the one big play, which was 30-some-odd yards, I think he ended up giving up 5 receptions during the game as a rookie 7th-round pick. I continue to say he overachieves. And I thought he settled down as the game wore on, and he was far – not that he played well, but he was far from the biggest problem on the Eagles' defense yesterday.
And then another one of your quick hits was where's Wendell? Because Wendell Smallwood obviously a factor in the ball game, but not in the rushing game per se.
Yeah, again, week after week, Ryan Matthews is not getting a lot of playing time. And that tells me a couple things. He's probably not healthy, which is always with Ryan Matthews. Or, it's even worse if he is healthy, because that tells you the coaching staff doesn't have a lot of confidence in them. And the bottom line is Darren Sproles is not a feature back. So you have to get this running game going, especially this week against Minnesota, because if you look at their corners, the Eagles receivers are not getting open against the Minnesota corners. So you have to run the football against that team. And if Ryan Matthews can't do it, you've seen the juice that Wendell Smallwood brings with the young legs. I think you got to start giving him more touches.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Let's fast forward to some of the things that came into light today with the injuries. And normally, up to this point, John, they've been pretty injury-free, and that has been attributed to their success, I think. They've been pretty injury-free. But now the rigors of a season start to come in. Benny Logan, significant groin injury, possibly out this week. You've got plantar fasciitis for Kelsey. That might be a blessing in disguise. Maybe they'll get him out of there. You also got you got knee tendonitis from Jordan Matthews, Ron Brooks with a calf. There's a lot of injuries all of a sudden getting in here. What are we thinking for this week? You got a bunch of guys who won't practice Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, Doug claims they're all going to play except Benny. Benny's probably not going to play. But I don't think that's that big of a deal, to be honest, this week, because Minnesota is dead last, 32nd running the football without Adrian Pederson. So I think he can make do without him this week. It's the next week against Dallas, Ezekiel Elliott, and that offensive line. If you don't have Benny Logan back by then, you might have some serious issues. Doug claims the other guys are going to sit out Wednesday and be fine to play Sunday. We'll have to see how that develops. But there's a lot of banged up. Look at the team coming in. It's the only undefeated team in football. We're talking about Vitae. Hey, both of Minnesota's tackles are on injured reserve. They've lost one of the greatest running backs who ever lived is on injured reserve. Their quarterback is on injured reserve. They make do. They're playing with 2 backup tackles. You can't make excuses in this league. And as you said, Mike, for the most part, they've been a very, very healthy team. These kinds of nicks and bumps and bruises happen to every team in the NFL, and you have to learn to deal with them and find a way to persevere. So far, it hasn't gone well for the Eagles in that aspect of it.
John, I got a tweet from a listener that asked if there was a tackle available that the Eagles could pick up, or could they trade a veteran guy for somebody else's, has-been tackle? And I thought, gee, do you really want to trade for somebody off the Browns? I mean, it's a tough scenario that they're in.
Hey, you would love to get Joe Thomas. That's the one thing everybody's looking at. Because the Browns are obviously going the Moneyball route, and there's a lot of talk that if you're going to go that direction, just free Joe Thomas, because he's one of the best tackles in football, and it's just not fair to him to sit and endure what they're doing. But it's a business. You'd have to give up a first-round pick to get a player like that. Certainly the Eagles are not going to want to do that. Minnesota just picked up Jake Long. He was the one guy on the street coming off 2 ACLs, but obviously he has a ton of talent. He's gone. So, no, there's not a lot of options. You got to make do with what you have in-house. And I think the Eagles have the recipe, at least have the materials to get through it. I just think they're using them incorrectly. I think they'd be fine if they went with their original plan. Not that they'd be as good. You're always going to take a step back if you lose a player the caliber of Lane Johnson, but I think if they went with their original plan and kicked Barber outside, put Wisniewski at left guard, I think they'd be making do a heck of a lot better.
John will be in studio for the full show tomorrow. We'll do a lot of NFL. We'll look back at the whole week, all the games, NFC East. And I think those who's in, who's outs are going to have a lot different look tomorrow.
There'll be some movement
at 3:30. All right, Sports Bash. John has more on the Eagles and the Redskins at 97.3 ESPN.com. This week he's got the bright spots in the game. Yes, there were some positives. He's got that at the website, plus his quick hits and reactions to the loss to the Redskins yesterday. John, we'll see you tomorrow, pal.
Hey, thank you, guys.